I have a lot of cowboy boots.
Well, because you're in Chicago, that's of course what you're going to have from Chicago.
Cowboy boots? Yeah, they're big
Yeah,
here.
yeah, absolutely. When I think Chicago, I think the big belt buckles, the cowboy hat, which you're missing. You need a
Cowboy
cowboy hat to
hat,
go with your
cowboy
shirt.
boots.
Cowboy boots. Yeah, that's exactly what I envision.
Yeah, yeah, it's big in Chicago. You got it right.
That's right.
Yeah. So welcome to the Division Week 14 build show, DZPD build show. There it is.
14.
I am gamer tag Burt Reynolds, just back from Nashville, and the Golden Voice of Gaming Negan Killjoy is, as usual, my co-host.
Not from
And
Nashville.
normally we would
Didn't get to
not
go
from
to
Nashville.
Nashville.
Not.
Stayed home this
How
week.
far are you from? How far are you from Bakersfield? That's the other end
Probably
of country music right there.
about an hour or so. About an hour outside Bakersfield or
Yeah.
so. Mm-hmm.
See,
Kind of close.
that's
There's no
that's
reason
the
to
home
go to
of
Bakersfield other than maybe to visit the home of some music, but
yeah. Buck
that's
Owens,
me.
Dwight Yoakam, Merle Haggard. Yeah, lots of
Really,
country
Dwight's from
music out of
there?
Bakersfield.
Didn't realize
Yeah,
Dwight was
they're all
from out
from there.
there.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. If I was,
Western country music.
I was gonna say it's kind of the almost the well the stuff you named isn't pop, but Dwight Yoakam's a little bit of pop music sometimes, little pop country, but not too bad.
He is a little pop country. Thousand
But it's
Miles
all
from
right.
Nowhere, man. It's like my favorite.
There you
I
go.
love that song.
There you go.
Um, but our normal format is we go through builds that we've put together, and these are builds that are, we call them dad builds. Low effort, low farm builds, although, as we mentioned last week, they've gotten pretty darn optimized. Now, the thing that made
Yes,
them
they
dad
have.
builds is they weren't really optimized in week two, like streamers who, had pretty well optimized their builds after 2 weeks. These took months to optimize, but they are pretty optimized. We're not going to cover a build tonight. We're actually just going to have a nice little in the office chat. It's raining outside, isn't it?
It
We're
is.
gonna have a nice little chat. We're gonna find somewhere quiet to have a chat. Let's go find somewhere quieter. Alarm's driving me crazy. Um, let's see what's going on in the other parts of the White House here.
Again, man, they hit
Quieter
the
over
environment out
here.
of the park on this. Even with the RNG and the
They
stuff we've
really
talked about
did.
as the warts on the game,
They
the
did.
environment's really well done.
I would go to the
Round
Situation
table.
Room. Situation Room.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, so we're actually just gonna have a nice little talk in the Situation Room tonight about TU6, title update 6 slash episode
Episode
2.
2. Yep, that's what they're calling it. They're both. So I think in the references as they go forward, they might interchange them. So when you hear episode 2, it's also TU6.
Title update 6, episode 2. And I think we'll also venture into talking a little bit about some other games that are upcoming. That's where we were talking about before we started the show. Um, so what are you thinking about title update 6 slash episode 2, Negan? You've spent more time. I was out of town, so I did not watch State of the Game. I had to watch a recap of it and had to read a little bit about it. So you've had more time to roll it around in your mind. And what are you thinking?
I think the loot changes they're making, and we can get into details and stuff like that in a sec. I think the loot changes are a step in the right direction. I don't know if it's going to address everybody's concerns, but I
Mm-hmm.
think they're it. It does sound like, and we've mentioned this before, and some people have talked about it, but it does sound like they're listening to the player base and they're understanding that there are issues with the loots and the way they get the loots and stuff like that. So they're listening to them as far as that goes. Stuff like for people like you, I think they also listen to people complaining about the materials. So
Mm-hmm.
the material that there's going to talk, we can talk about that as well. But I kind of got excited watching the state of the game and listening to him talk and watching it. I actually kind of got a little excited. I like the game anyway, but I'm like, okay, those are I think going to be good changes. What do you think of the little
Yeah.
bit that you spent with it?
Yeah, I mean, so some of the changes I read or saw in the recap. You'll be able to target gear from certain missions and certain zones in the map. That's something we've talked about in the past. So that sounded like
It
a
is.
positive win, right?
Yep. And it was not
Um,
just. It was also guaranteed drops. What they were saying is that it wasn't just going to be random and maybe you'll
chance.
get some, but apparently from the bosses and stuff that in the different zones they were saying that's where the guaranteed drops. Is the way I understood it.
Yes,
So
that's
that'll
what
be
I
nice.
understood as well.
And the
Yeah. So if
missions
you're
are going to be the same way. The bosses at the end of the missions guaranteed drops. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, if you were targeting like a piece of Providence gear, you go fight or run a certain mission or go to a certain zone. That seems good. I like that. Seems reasonable, right?
And the weapons and the different weapons and the different. So if you're chasing auto rifles, or you're chasing. I don't know why anybody. Well, some people do, but shotguns. I mean, they're going to have those. My favorite part about that was not only that you can target, because we have talked about that it's kind of cool if you go in and you can do something that you know has a better chance of dropping what you want. In that vicinity, we've
Mm-hmm.
talked about that. I think that's what people. I think that's a good way to do it. The other
Yeah,
side of it
I
is that they rotate it. That they're not going to be, the same thing all the time, day after day. And they made reference specifically to, and everybody talks about it, is the Lexington grind from Div 1.
right,
When
right,
everybody's
which
chasing the
everyone
raised
should
Barretts.
make reference to because that was terrible. Um,
Even though everybody had it down to what, 8 minutes, I think was the timing people
oh,
were doing it. It was like 8 minutes.
well,
You
and you
could
had
get through
every
it.
every line of dialogue memorized and every. I mean, I mean, half the time
Ain't
though. I
this
mean,
some
be honest,
shit?
dude. I mean, we were just standing. We would stand by doorways with a flame turret, and the enemies wouldn't even get out the doors, right? I mean,
Oh,
it was
absolutely.
sort of broken. It was sort
Oh
of
no,
broken.
it was definitely broken. And for somebody like me who doesn't really, I have not have the attention span of a gnat, it was even more cumbersome to go through that back to
To
back
just
to
keep
back
doing
to
it,
back.
doing it,
Yeah.
doing it, doing it, doing it.
So
Yeah,
so I'm glad they're
and
rotating that around.
that is a good thing. One of the other changes I read about, which I think is an interesting one, is that with the exception of 511 Tactical, all the high end brand sets will have a piece at every slot.
That
511
is
won't because
correct.
it's a real world brand and they don't really make pieces for all those slots, and so there will not be. So that one's interesting. I think the only thing I saw coming out of that, I mean, that has potential to be cool. You know, we'll see what the ones that, for example, don't have a holster will have, right? Because you'll have a Sokolov holster. How many mod slots will it have? Right.
Oh, I see what you're talking about. Okay.
Um, some of these ones that don't will have some interesting different things, right? I mean, when you look at what do they have, what do they not have? Because I think it's what Sokolov's is mask, chest, knees. So now you have Sokolov gloves. What will that look like? What about a Sokolov backpack? I mean, we'll have to see how that gets implemented. Who knows, right? The only thing I saw that potentially could become broken about that would be you could have a three-piece Providence, three-piece Y'all gear, which I think would become the most OP set theoretically, because both of them, as their third piece bonus, have 5% extra weapon damage. And Y'all gear has handling talents, and the Providence has health talents. I think if you put a 3-3 Berserk Providence Y'all gear Berserk build together, you could potentially be pretty strong. But I don't know
Yeah.
that it's like broken strong. I think it's just probably pretty strong. You know what I mean? I don't think it would.
They're talking 5% damage on top of whatever you're putting together, so I don't think that's massively broken.
It's not.
Now,
But
now if it
if
was
you
two
if you do
15%, then
have
it'd be another issue.
right, yes, yeah, and again, we'll have to see how all this gets implemented, right? Like I don't know because they're talking about shifting some of them will have some of them that have talents today. Potentially, we'll have versions where they don't, and ones that don't may have talents going forward. I mean, it sounds interesting. And then obviously the other thing that I think is interesting in that vein is that all of the gear sets, meaning the green gear, will only require 4 pieces to be a full gear set. So you won't need 6. And that means you'll be able to run stuff like Unstoppable Force on your chest, Devastating on another piece, right? Or Patience on a piece. Which today, of course, the biggest problem with the gear sets that makes them weak is they don't have any talents. And they, I believe, said they are looking at putting talents on the backpack and chest of the gear sets.
Yes, they did. They mentioned that as well. So
So
they'll
you
start rolling the
potentially
talents.
also, yeah, would have that, right? So you could, that could definitely help some of the gear sets. And I'm imagining an aces and eights with Unstoppable Force. Maybe a
Yeah,
couple pieces of, Devastating or hard hitting rolled or something. I mean, that could make those, viable, certainly viable options for regular play instead of just use in the raid, and it'd be
and
interesting.
speaking
It'll be
and
interesting.
speaking of the raid and aces and eights and the raid specific gear sets, they did say that those are going to go open world now as well, with the exception, I believe, of backpack and chests. Those will
With
only
the
be in the
exception of
raids
backpack and
themselves.
chest. Right,
Right. So
right.
that's
So you
that's
would
also
have
kind of
to.
cool.
That is cool. That is cool. Although and I think the chest, the backpacks, and then the Eagle Bearer are all going to still stay raid exclusive, which is fine with me. I don't have
Yeah,
a problem with that.
absolutely.
I think that's fair. I don't, there should still be stuff locked in the raid. So that was another change I read. One of the other changes I read was that you will be able to. They aren't going to let you roll 2 things on a piece. I had hoped they were going to allow us to recal more than one thing about a piece, right? I've saved stuff in my stash actually where it's like if I could recal 2 things, it would be the perfect piece. It's not happening, but they are
Nope.
going to allow us to recal.
Womp womp.
They are going to allow us to recal like a blue to a red, or a red to a blue, or a yellow to a blue, or a yellow to a red, or so you won't be locked into the color scheme that's on your. You'll be able to roll one thing. So if you got a all red chess piece, but you really needed to have armor on it, you could roll armor onto it, which is, I mean, I think that's cool. I really do. I genuinely think that will help tighten up the RNG grind a little bit,
Yep.
because I think about, especially on builds like a 377 or a 577, the amount of times I get a chess piece that's awesome, but has 2 reds on it, for example, I just have to trash it, right? Because like I'm not going to use a second chess piece red towards my 3 or 5, because that would
Because
be a
that's what you're
total
limited to. When you
waste.
when you talk 377 or 577, you're limited to 3 reds. So when you get a piece
Mm-hmm.
that has 2 right off the bat, it does limit your options. So you would look at
It's
and just
it's
so
it's dumpster trash instantly. There's no. I would never run, say, critical chance as one of my 3 reds. I'm gonna want to run damage to elites, weapon damage on the chest, and specific damage on the gloves, or weapon damage on the backpack. One
right,
combination of those 3. So if I got a chest that was great, let's say I got a chest and it had 20% armor on it and unstoppable force, and it was just a perfect chest piece, except for it had 8% weapon damage and 10% crit chance. I'm going to throw that thing in the trash. It's getting deconstructed, or I'm selling it because I can't run it in my build.
right.
It would be a total waste. So, yeah, I mean that will tight or loosen up things a little bit and make them a
Yeah,
little
well,
more forgiving. Yeah.
yep. So now you can it makes them more forgiving. The downside I can see is keeping track of what do you when you're looking for stuff, and we talked about this last week, as a matter of fact, of the little tweaks that you get the build, and then there's those little pieces or those extra pieces you can find. Now it's on top of that, you can, I guess it's not a problem, but you can look at and look for, oh, I need a chest piece, or I can keep this chest the way it is, but I'm looking for better armor, and I can now run and chase that. So that's the advantage as far as that goes.
Right.
So the
Yep.
RNG.
Very much so. Very much so. And then I think the other part of it too is adding, they're doubling the stash size, so you at least will be able to hold on to more stuff, but you're gonna have to keep track of more stuff. So it actually potentially makes the inventory. I mean, that would seem like that would ease the inventory mini game a little bit, but I think it'll actually. I mean, if you're the type of person who has 150 items in your stash, 2 days after TU6 drops, you're gonna be the kind of person that has 300 items in your stash, right? I mean, it's not really gonna free anything up. And
Nope. No, it's not.
right,
And we know people like
no,
that.
it's not.
And
Yeah, I don't.
and with
I'm not naming names, but we do know people like that.
I think I'm one of those people. I'm sitting at like 130 or something like that. I got a little scared when they said 300. I was like, holy crap! Because what Div 1 was, I did the stash get on Div 1. Was it 5? It got pretty high, didn't it?
No,
No, I
you
could
had. I think we had 150 per character. We
Is that
had
what it is?
three. Or we had
Right.
5 characters. 4 characters. 4 characters.
4 characters. That's right. You did the new character for the mule and moved back and forth to the stash. That's right. That's why it seemed like 500.
Right.
So
It seemed like a
crap
ton
back and
because
forth.
you had 150 backpack and 150 in the stash for each one of your 4 tunes. So you had, yeah, like a lot of space. And I mean, you could do the same mule game. I have a mule. I have a level 7 tune mule. It's got some of my stuff on it. But the real trick there, I mean, again, is going to be now keeping track of the fact that you can roll stuff over. You know, like it will make a lot of the pieces that would have been trash before not out of trash now. So now you have to think much harder and also keep track of what all you got in your stash for use in that way. Um, yeah, so I mean, I think that's a good change. I think it's a good change. I think it isn't gonna do what they think it's gonna do.
No,
I think it'll
no,
ease the
and
RNG.
that's
I don't think it's gonna make the stash space thing any better, and I don't think it's gonna make hoarding any less important, and I don't think it's gonna really fix any of that.
no, and that's
Recaling a
been
little more enjoyable.
that's been received with mixed reviews in the community as well. So for the same reason, just talked about the inventory mini game is real. So
It is.
people are like 300 now. It's I get to play that mini game up to 300. So that's been received with different levels of yay or nays.
Right.
But
So those were the
speaking of,
changes I really read about and was
you were on
interested
the
in.
fun ones. I
What
thought for sure you'd look at the one about the materials. Did you not look at that?
No, I did. So yeah, they're increasing. Well, and this one has many facets to it. So if you're the type of person like me, I craft a lot. Not really a lot of gear, but a lot of weapons. Just because I mean you have a lot more control there of again getting a gun that you want. I can sit and roll AKs until I get the AK I want. Um,
Literally,
so
because
they
that's the blueprints are very specific, so you can get as specific as you need to. Mm-hmm.
so they're increasing how many materials you can hold. They're decreasing
one.
how many materials it costs.
It's 2.
They're giving new sources of materials, meaning now when you open a green chest out in the wild, it'll also have some sort of material in it too. So you like pick up a piece of gear and 10 polycarbonate. They're making it so one type of something when deconstructed has a chance to give polycarbonate. They're still not fixing electronics, which is interesting. That one's still going to be hard to come by. And then I think that was it.
Yeah, and there's the little things like I think they said something to the effect of when you're full of materials, those
They'll
materials
stop
won't
dropping.
drop anymore. They'll stop dropping, so you
So
won't
you
see
won't
the
have a map
towers or
full
like
of
that.
stuff, and it won't
That's right.
constantly make the sound every time you run past it that says, "Woo, there's stuff on the ground." Yeah, that's going away. Oh, and they are gonna finally tell you what the source of the missing blueprints are
There you
and
go.
where you should go to get them. Because I'm missing a few. I know.
Mm-hmm. So am I.
Can't figure
I
out
don't know where
why.
they're at.
And right. So they're gonna give us a heads up on that. That's pretty cool. I'm excited about that. finally go finish up my blueprints. I think that was it, though, really, on that one. Did I miss
Yeah,
anything?
no, I just
You know better than
no,
me.
no, you hit it. I was just gonna say I thought for people who do craft, I'm not a huge crafter. I probably will be in the new changes, to be honest, with the way you can move, calibrate. You can recalibrate stuff you craft now. So I think having the ability to move stuff around in the new one in TU6 would be nice as well. So I may craft more. But for people who do craft, I thought that was a good thing as well. The more materials, it's something about you can share them between characters as well.
Characters, yep,
So
yeah.
so you can max out a character and then move the materials back and forth. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but that'll be interesting how they implement that as well. So yeah, that was a
So
crafting.
here's why I was less excited about it than you thought I would be, Nathan. Because much like we just said with the type of person who has 150 items in their stash, the type of person who crafts till they run out of materials is just going to craft more till they run out of materials and still have to go farm them just the same way. It's not going to change a darn thing.
Sure, sure.
10
But
minutes after I boot up, I will be out of all the mats and have to go look
that's
for
right.
them all again.
You
So it
craft
does
broke
not, I mean,
run your little loot route.
right. I'm always crafting material broke. They'll make this change and I'll still always be crafting material broke. So I'll have crafted more items, but I'll still be crafting material broke. So I think, for me, it's like, well, that's cool. I'll still have the same problem. But yeah, I mean, it is a good change. And I think for the average person who doesn't, you know, spend a ton of time and energy in crafting, they'll probably be really well served by it. The average player is
Right.
probably going to be very well served by that change. Just
Yeah,
like,
yeah, I think so. So yeah, no, so yeah, those are the main items. Going back to I'm cheating as I look at the list I made. But going back to the drops, the targeted drops, the first thing I noticed when they were talking about it in the state of the game was the way they led into the drops was they first talked about they're going to add 30 something named items.
named one. Named items. Yep. Yep.
So
I read that too.
we've talked about this multiple times. We talked about the whole RNG and how large the pool is and all this other stuff. And then they immediately say, oh yeah, we're adding 35 more items. Oh, and we're also going to put, all the gear sets out in the wild. We're going to add these stuff. So they made the loot pool bigger. The RNG is going to
Right.
be what it is. But they got into how they're targeting and stuff like that. So that was cool. I like how they did that. And the fact that they use an example of like the named items are going to be worth it. And they said that with Div before, but the named items are going to be worth it. They're going to be like a best in class type item where if the ARs can have 10% damage or something can have 10% damage, the named item will have 15%. So it actually will be a benefit to have and find and get a named item. So that was cool as well. Adding them to the pool scared me. If they make it worthwhile that the item actually brings something to the table, I'm not as scared. So
Right.
that's kind of
That will
nice.
be cool. That will be cool. I do like that change a lot. And for those of you who don't know, like an example of that I was just checking to see if I had one in my inventory and it's in my stash, but the shield splinter would be an example of that. It's a named F2000 assault rifle that has curated talents on it. Problem with it is right now it is totally variable in terms of how good, like Cassie Mendoza, the hidden vendor, sells it pretty frequently. But every week the damage roll on it is totally random. So like if you killed all your hunters, you got it, but at a random damage level. And then if you bought it, like maybe it was probably 5 weeks ago, Cassie was selling it with a 95% damage. And I bought it then. But like the next week she was selling it with like a 15% damage. It's got curated
Right.
talents, but it's like, yeah, I mean, like you can get it and it's total trash. And even then, the gun is okay. It's not great. It's a
Little
fun,
underwhelming.
it's a fun gun if you roll Allegro onto it in the middle slot. Then it's a pretty fun gun. But it's really just an amusement for fun gun. It does burn down like Chunga heavies really easy out in the open world. It just shreds them. It's not a fantastic weapon, But they are, yes,
No.
I read they are adding a ton of really good named gear, and that'll be fun.
So
That takes me back to Destiny 1. Um, Destiny 1 had some named legendary weapons, like the Grasp of Malek pulse rifle, one of my favorites in the whole game. Like they had some really cool named. They weren't exotics. Their talents weren't super exotic, but they were just like it was like a curated role. And they did that a little bit in Destiny 2 with curated roles, where like I have a vouchsafe that dropped with the curated role on it, meaning it dropped with a specific set of talents and fully masterworked. And that's a thing you could get, like a curated role of gun. So it reminds me a little bit of that, which I think is neat.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was good. And again, with the targeted stuff, was the Dark Zone's going to be considered the same thing as the other zones? So it'll have specific items and stuff that you can go in the Dark Zone, which is good because there are more bosses, which means more chances to drop. And the fun part of that was they still are going to make them contaminated. So you're still,
Right.
they're still trying to get people into the Dark Zone. I don't think people are going in the Dark Zone as much as Massive would like them to go into it. So they're doing things that are
Like
you're trying to yeah. I think we talked about the only time we really go in the DZ is basically I go in there not as often as you, but I go in there to grab the daily rewards and go to the safe house real fast, and then I bolt. And then we farm to the DZ on occasion, but yeah, nobody really goes in there for any reason, and certainly don't go in there for the PvP aspect. So
well, and
definitely
the funny
somebody
thing
like
is
me.
as long as the meta is still that 3-11-7 build that we featured a couple weeks ago when I featured the PvP version of the Bloodsucker 3-11-7. As long as the meta is still that,
Right.
the PvP for anybody who isn't running that build is gonna be it's super unfun. Because I can tell you, I went in there the other day to pick up my loot. I always put that build on before I go in there, just in case, right? And it was a day when it was the occupied Dark Zone, and I went in to go grab my stuff, and there were two people like fighting the. I always go get my loot from was that DZ West? I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. DZ West, where the house is like
I was
two
yeah,
blocks down from
and
the
it,
entrance.
yep. So West Echo CP, and it is this today. It's the occupied Dark Zone right now, and it was the occupied Dark Zone that day. And there's a zone right inside here, right about here, that you can fight one of the landmarks. And I came in the door, and there were two guys fighting the landmark. And basically, the second I came out the door and started running down the street, they started coming after me to try and PvP with me.
Sure.
And I wanted nothing to do with them. But I turned around and got into it with them and killed both of them without even trying. Like, I was stealing. One of them was running a clutch build, and the other one was running something else. And I was just constantly being healed by their stupidity. And again, I had
because
no
of
intent to even
Bloodsucker.
PvP,
Because you had
and
the
I
Bloodsucker
basically
going.
suck at it. Yeah, but I have a decently optimized PvP 3-11-7 Bloodsucker build. It's pretty well optimized. I'm not gonna lie, it is pretty well optimized. But I'm not good at PvP, and these idiots couldn't kill me to save their lives. And I'm pretty sure they had pretty well optimized builds, and I'm pretty sure they were pretty hardcore PvPers, just based off the amount of X's in their names and whatnot.
Yes. The giveaway
but
of a good PvPer is the triple X in front.
triple X's in front and back. But yeah,
Yes.
dude, it wasn't even fun. So, and I'm guessing they weren't anticipating that I was going to have that build on, but it was not really that. So, unless this
So that's cool. Yep.
particular drop, unless TU6 episode 2 changes that meta, I'm still going to go in the dark.
Yeah, people still avoid it and stuff like that.
Cleaned up by those people. It's not fun to get cleaned up by people like me. I wouldn't want that.
No, trust me. Trust me, coming from somebody who gets cleaned up quite a bit in the DZ, yeah, it's not fun. So just real fast, so we did talk about all this stuff. From your perspective, since this is a build show, how do you think these changes, do you think it actually is going to increase the type of builds? Do you think the metas are going to change, that you're going to have an attack meta and then really a counter? You're going to have counter metas and stuff like that. Do you think that's going to happen inside the
No,
PvP and PvE? You don't think so?
no, I don't. I think what this update does is the two things I think this update potentially will do is it will make the gear sets less of a gimp, right? Like you're gimping yourself if you run True Patriot in a group. You're even kind of gimping yourself if you run aces and eights in a group, unless you're doing the raid, where it really does kind of pay off, pay dividend. Um, Tip of the spear, it will make some of these builds actually viable. I think it has quite a bit of potential. Depends on what talents are able to roll on the chest and backpack. They did not specify. They did not say active versus inactive. They didn't detail any of that, right? Um, it could even make ongoing directive valuable for skill builds potentially. Um, so that might change, but those aren't. That's not going to change the PvP meta. That's going to just change possibly a PvE, and I don't even call it. I don't think it'll make them metas. I think they might become viable.
So you think the options in PvE will change? You'll have a larger. You think there will be more options as far as builds
Yeah,
go in PvE?
yeah. But then again, I don't know how much the content was all that hard. I mean, we have friends we run with that run their True Patriot build. When we're doing story missions and even I think we believe we did heroic title basin with somebody who was running True Patriot. Like it's not like it's not like that kind of content requires you to be fully maxed out from a build perspective, right? Like even running a gimped gear set build, still finish it as long as everybody else on your team had decent gear on. You know what I mean? It wasn't like that. So now at least it'll allow them to potentially be viable if they really want to run a gear build. Um, I think
But
the only other
generally
thing it
speaking,
does
outside
is.
of gears,
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say outside of gear sets, you might be getting to this. I might be segueing you into it, but outside of the gear sets, do you think it'll help? Ultimately, do you think this addresses to some extent some of the RNG stuff? It sounds like you do. We mentioned a couple of times that it
Oh yeah,
does with the
yes,
recal and all that stuff.
yeah. So while I don't think it's going to change metas, the only thing that could change the metas here would be having those additional pieces. Like now you could have Fenris gloves, right? Which you think about that one for a second, like it'll free up more people to be able to run. Like right now, Fenris chest, Fenris holster, right? Like that. Some of the metas will shift of as to what gear sets are most valuable because you'll have, you know, whatever. Although we have to see, again, what is going to roll with what talents on it. Will they have Fenris gloves, but they don't roll with anything on them? I don't know. I mean, who knows,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
no talent. I don't know. Um, so we'll have to see how that gets executed. That may shift the metas a little bit, um, but it's certainly going to make this a way more accessible game for the casual gamer in terms of putting builds together. Without a doubt.
Agreed.
If you're putting in 6 hours a week on this game, you will be able to put a viable, like targeted viable build together in a much shorter period of time. So I think that's a win for the community. It's a win for the game. I don't think you or I are going to be that impacted, Negan. We've already got our builds pretty well set. You know what I mean? Maybe a little, but not a ton. And I don't anticipate my builds changing remarkably just because now there's some new pieces available in different slots. But who knows? Again, the biggest one I think will be Fenris. That having Fenris available in other slots is probably huge.
Right.
There's my
That makes sense. Yeah.
prediction.
Yeah.
If it's of any value, it'll be there primarily because today it's only available in holster, chest, and knees. And the knees are very good because they have two talents, and those will still be strong, but they don't have a mod slot. And you know, yeah, I think that's the one I want to watch how they implement that one.
So even though we're excited, not even though we are excited, I'm excited about it. I mean, I don't want to speak for you specifically, but I'm excited about it. I think they're doing that. But there are some questions, which they are going to try to address. The last thing we can talk about, and then we can wrap it up. The last thing we talk about is they are doing a PTS before TU6.
Yeah.
So they're doing that. They're going to start. They're going to show some of these things off in the PTS. I don't remember if they said if it was going to be PTS. Whether it's just for PCs like they've done last one, or if it's going to be across the board. It's probably just PCs, but they are doing that. And they specifically said this PTS is not going to have any of the story stuff in any of the narratives, as they call it. So people can't get spoiled or spoil any of the stories like that happened with the last PTS. So there you go. They're doing.
Yeah,
they're
I'm
making
excited.
some. I think they're making the right
It.
steps.
I'm excited to see it, and I am excited for this update, and I do still love this game, and so I am excited. I am also excited, Negan, because tonight Borderlands 3 launches.
I was gonna say, speaking of other games and such,
I do like Borderlands 3, so I'm excited for that tonight. That launches in about 20 minutes, and then Ghost Recon Breakpoint launches in about 2 weeks. So we're going to have some other games come into the mix on some levels, and it's a good time to be gaming, right? Heading into the holiday season, you get all the blockbuster titles, and hopefully get a really good update, really solid update to this. And I know Destiny has a big update coming, Shadowkeep, so there's a lot of good stuff coming out and a lot of good things to do. So, but excited to hear what we heard yesterday about this, and I heard today.
Absolutely.
Again, I was out of town, but yeah, pretty pumped.
They record that for people just like you when you're not out of town and you want to watch the state of the game later. No, it's really good. I'm pretty jazzed about it too. Like I said at the beginning, it's exciting. I like the changes they're making. I think they're going in the right direction, and it's baby steps. I mean, we're talking millions of lines of code that they got to go through, and jokingly or not, we've made mention. Everybody has mentioned that sometimes they go through and they forget to move the zero, and something becomes massively overpowered just because of the way they do the math. So they got to make baby steps.
We have seen that in the past. We have once see that again, right? So I'm glad to see him do that, right? And with that, man, I think we're rocking done, right? I mean,
I think so. I think we're at the point where see ya.
All right. See you later, Negan.
See ya, Burt. Have a good one. Well, everybody
anyway. Well, everybody anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, no, not just Burt. I didn't.